So what if I told you that I was in the middle of playing Slay the Spire, and unfortunately I can't show any of you because I'm playing on my phone, and I'm debating on whether or not it is more important than me doing my job right now. And I'm saying that not to be funny or snide, but because this is gonna be one of those episodes that is incredibly uncomfortable for a lot of you, and there's really no way around that. So, okay. Let's go ahead and just get this out of the way right now so that I can get this off of my chest. So, the other day, I did a video about the Graham Platner situation, where I basically came down on the side of, we don't have enough evidence to make a judgment call. And I'm gonna be honest, I still believe that wholeheartedly. I believe we do not have what I would consider to be enough evidence to make a full judgment call here. That said, when I came to that conclusion in that video, which has not gone up on the channel because I did not have enough information to decide whether that was a video that should go up, there's a little bit of extra information that has come out since then, and it's information regarding Platner's ex. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. We're going to go ahead and see what her side of the story is in her own words, so that we do not get anything twisted where this story is concerned. We are going to try to do our due diligence in making sure that her side is heard, because there is a chance that at the end of this, we come to the conclusion that she's full of shit. But there's also the ability to come to the conclusion that, Platner definitely needs to be dropping out. That's also a possibility at the end of this. So, apparently, CNN's Jake Tapper had an interview with the victim here. So we are going to take a listen, like I said, to her side of the testimony. Also, we are now doing a video talking about sexual assault. So I may be a little less silly today than normal, because this is one of those things that you just don't be silly about. Also, there is a part of this that needs to be considered as well that is incredibly frustrating, for me at least, and that is, looking at the comments on both sides of this, I've been seeing a lot of just very, very smug assholery, I guess is the best way to put it. On both the right and the left sides of this. On the left side of this, the smug assholery has been to the tune of, we warned you, we told you, but at the same time, like, the purity testing left are the kind that will warn you about damn near anything and will forget that politicians are all corrupt in some way, form, or fashion, at least to some degree. So, like, congratulations, we don't have a pure person. You get the Evangelion congratulations meme as a way to talk about it. Barkadoja says, before the essay stuff, any of the past controversies could have been handled better, like getting out in front of it, show it up front, and go with "this used to be me, but I've become a better man" kind of spiel. But instead, they kept being dug up by outside individuals like journalists, which looked awful. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I disagree. I disagree, and here's my reason. In no other circumstance, except when somebody is a public-facing figure, do we ask them to get up and air all of their dirty laundry for us. Like, that's not a standard that we generally hold most normal people to. A lot of times we kind of have this understanding that there are certain things that if somebody has it left in their past, maybe there is a reason why they have decided to leave it in their past. And again, we don't seem to have that same standard when it comes to politicians. And I know that the reason for that, part of that is that politicians are the people who are going to be leading us. They need to be the ones who are infinitely more responsible than anybody else, because they are the ones who are being given the reins. So if they are not trustworthy, if they are not doing their due diligence, then they do not need to be having any amount of power. And I understand that side of that argument as well. I just want to go ahead and point out that it is frustrating to me, this idea that everybody should be maximally transparent about every bad thing they've possibly ever done. Because, like, the older you get, the higher your capacity for having done shitty things. I don't know. But again, politicians, different set of rules. I understand why that different set of rules is there. But For instance, I would not expect any of you to air out all of your dirty laundry in the chat so that I can determine whether or not you are a moral individual. I would also not ask most content creators to do that. But again, politicians, different set of rules. Let's go ahead and see what the victim is saying, though, because I've said my piece. I've said what I feel about the situation without the info from her yet. And I don't want to poison the well, but one of my criticisms from the last time that we took a look at this situation was the fact that she did not have any receipts about what had happened. And that maximally frustrates me. The receipts that did exist are to the tune of conversations with therapist, but conversation with therapist is not the same thing as evidence of thing happening. And I pointed out in the video that I talked about before, it's also really hard to even have that evidence in the first place, because in order to have that evidence, you would have to be able to go back in time and put a camera in the area where an assault is happening. None of us are going to be perfect arbiters of judgment on this. It's just not a thing that we are really capable of being. We can at least be more right or more wrong. But I could be wrong. There could be something in here that changes that.
You described your relationship with Graham Platner as a very good example of what modern dating is like.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that, I think there's a lot of situationships. I think people are dating multiple people at the same time, whether that's known or not known by the people involved.
I mean, that actually is kind of true. So, prior to me and Saki getting together, there were two people who were... it's very arrogant to say, like, vying for my attention. That's not really the best way to put it, because that makes me sound like an asshole. Even though, again, I am an asshole. That's not an untrue part of my character. But there were two people who were trying to be in a relationship with me. One of them ultimately ended up going with somebody else, and the other one told me during a special date, or during a special day, that they were going to be busy, so they were okay with me going with the other person for that day. And then I found out that they were not actually okay with that. They had said they were okay with that, but they did the thing that people often do, where they say I'm fine and there's an asterisk at the end. So yeah, there is an aspect of this in modern dating. We don't really court each other the way that was once historically accepted. Whether that's good or bad, it's up to history.
So it was just a very common practice is what I viewed it as.
And kind of casual.
Yeah, very casual.
And when did you meet him, and how did you meet him?
Met him on Bumble, actually, in 2019. And I had...
Ravi says, fuck the games. Yeah, so that's actually one of the reasons why I'm kind of ultimately happy that I'm with Saki. A benefit of being with somebody who is as on the spectrum as my lovely girlfriend is there's usually not a lot of subtext in conversations. And that is a blessing I cannot even begin to articulate. I cannot stand trying to navigate the weirdness of, I said this, but I meant that. You should have understood that I meant this when I said that. Like, I don't have the time nor the wherewithal to actually engage in any of that. So please don't make me engage in any of that. I'm begging you. This is what I'm saying for that.
Known who he was. He grew up in the next town over. We had like a mutual family friend, so I always knew of his existence, but that was when we actually...
Spooky Moth, then. Thank you for subscribing.
And what'd you think of him?
At first I thought he was great. He's very well spoken, he's intelligent, he's charming. I thought a lot of good things. We had a great first date. It went and flowed really well.
He has described himself as self-medicating with alcohol.
Yeah.
He has described himself that way.
Yeah.
So no video? Oh, wait, hold on. There it is. There it is, sorry.
So I would think maybe that would have reared its head.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's something that I think a lot of people are desensitized to, in general, heavy drinking, and especially out of the relationship that I had just come out of, so it wasn't anything abnormal to me. I remember we were out one night, and he was drinking, and that's when he told me that he has PTSD.
When the New York Times story came out, You were in it.
So for those who don't know, Platner was a military veteran who then became a gun for hire, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he ended up like working mercenary work afterwards, didn't he? Something to that effect. So like him having PTSD after that, it tracks. Like I'd be fucked up from that personally. Blackwater, yeah, that's the kind of shit that fucks you up. Then again, at the same time, you're actively involved with fucking other people up, so still a problem at that point.
But you didn't go as far in that story as you are today.
Yeah.
Why not?
I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to violate this huge level of privacy to my own life to be able to infer that this person is not honest and trustworthy. I felt really protective of my own privacy throughout this whole process. And it got to a point where my privacy was no longer going to happen. And that was when I kind of just made the decision that, like, I'm going to say my piece and get it out there. I had tried to give the impression that something...
So, a thing that I want to note, and this is not necessarily a full point against her. It's not. But it is something that needs to be noted. The last time sexual assault allegations came out in regards to Platner, they came out a week before he had gone in to do his electionship. It happened a week before. And this is also happening a week before. Now, that is not a point in her favor or against her. That is simply an observation to be made about the fact that she is using the exact same timing as the last attempt to unseat Platner in some way, shape, or form. And that could have bearing, that could have no bearing. But when somebody says, I chose to do this conveniently at the exact time that would be the most damaging for an individual, there is an amount of scrutiny that I would like to apply to that.
Worse happened. And that's when it was like, I refused to comment further.
You definitely alluded to a bad night.
Yeah.
So bad that you never saw him again afterwards.
Yeah.
But just to underline the point, you're not coming forward because you have any political motivation.
No, not at all. That was...
So, again, even if she did or did not have political motivation, she would not be telling us that here. Just another thing to note. It is not necessarily a point in her favor or against, but when somebody says that they do not have political motivation behind a thing that they are doing, a thing that you need to be able to note in that situation is that is what would be said irrespective of the situation going forward. Marco says, I would like to add that in addition to the therapist emails, Politico also corroborated with an ex of hers and a friend who she had talked to with it about the time. Actually, I read the Politico article, and she did not corroborate that at the time. So when she had the conversation with her ex about it, it was a couple of years after the event. Same with the friend, actually. The corroborations from there, from what I read, were from a few years after the event. So we don't actually have any evidence right now that around the time that this happened, she had come forward to anybody in her social circles. But again, that's not a point against her because it is never on the victim to time when they come forward, because there's shock that can happen when a sexual assault happens. There's a feeling of unsafety that can happen when an assault happens, where you feel like if you were to come forward about it, you would inadvertently be doing something that would damage yourself later, and not because of any logical reason. It's just you've been violated, you've been hurt, so your brain can do that. So the 2 points there are, it doesn't necessarily lean in her favor or against her favor that she told people around her a year or two after the event that an event had happened. What it does do is it does lend credence to this not being a political thing, because by pointing that out, it does showcase that she, at the very least, did not conveniently pull all this information out of her asshole when Platner was about to gain an amount of power. That's the bit of evidence that comes out from there. It doesn't guarantee whether or not it happened. It doesn't actually add weight to whether or not it happened. What it adds weight to is that this is probably not a politically motivated thing. That's what that adds weight to in terms of how I would personally evaluate evidence. But again, I want to point out the complication there, as is always the case in something like this, is that the thing that the two things that I would need for evidence here that would be like my smoking guns entirely, one would be a police report. Even then, that's maybe a little iffy because you can always have a situation where somebody just wants to harm someone. It does not happen all that often, but I am not silly enough to assume that it could never happen, would never happen, has never happened. Also, conversations around the time that it happened, like the one she claimed to have had with Platner, would also be a smoking gun to me. But those bits of evidence have been deleted. She admitted herself that those bits of evidence are gone. And since those bits of evidence are gone, it's very hard for me to pull an honest evaluation there, because without access to the evidence that would be like the best smoking gun possible, in order not to believe her, but to point out that Platner needs to leave, needs to not be trusted, needs to go, that bit is gone. It's literally up in smoke in the aether.
It's actually one of the huge reasons that I didn't come forward and still struggled. Like, that was a huge moral conflict to feel like...
Because you'd like a Democrat to be in the Senate.
Yeah. I like the things that he speaks about. They're important. They're important to people. I'm one of those people.
But at the end of the day, you feel he's not being honest.
He's not being honest, no.
And we should note, this is 2021 we're talking about. It's only 5 years ago. Tell me about that.
So only 5 years ago, I understand where he's coming from with that. At the same time, that is a decent bit of time. Maybe it's not enough time for somebody to actually go through a significant character change, though, in regards to something of this degree. But at the same time, a thing to note is that in the conversation regarding Platner, regarding the assault allegations, she had said that... What was the exact thing? He was blackout drunk when it happened, and then the next day did not have a recollection of the fact that it had happened, which at that point we are having to take two claims and try to verify them simultaneously against each other. One of those claims is the claim from her that it happened. The other claim is the claim from him where he does not remember it. There are now two more claims added, or one claim that was already there, and now one claim that is added onto there that has to be evaluated as well.
When was it?
It was at the end of 2021. I remember it being shortly after I moved back into my winter home, because that is where it happened. And
there's also another thing that I want to point out as well. If somebody is blackout drunk, and this, just please remove any biases before I throw this at you, because this may come off as very, very strange, very weird. But if you are blackout drunk, would you say that that person is responsible if they are signing a contract? Because for me, I would have a very hard time taking any contract seriously that was signed during a time where somebody was blackout drunk. It would be very, very hard for me to take that contract seriously. I would even go as far as to say that would be something that you would try to get rid of in a court of law. You would try to get it torn up in a court of law. Now, that would read to me that if somebody is blackout drunk, you are not able to consent. But then that adds another layer to this as well, which is really, really problematic. And that is that the further drunk you are, the more you are just operating without your inhibitions. So while maybe he also could not consent to anything that was going on in that situation, at the same time, the actions that he was taking while inebriated are still actions that happened. They are still actions that happened and hurt a person, so they are still actions that need to be taken responsibility for, irrespective. Man, it's really... I hate to say this. There is so much in the two sides of this because of the nature of what these allegations are, what their implications are, and I'm trying to throw everything out from both sides of this so that you can kind of see where this is problematic. Because right now, what I'm seeing from the left wing on this is the further left you are going, you are finding people saying that they are upset that we are losing access to our guy. We are losing access to a guy who seemingly was willing to actually like hold Democrats to account. On the right hand, or on the further liberal side, you're getting the like smug assholes who are saying, we told you all along. And if you don't believe those people are a thing, I'm just going to ask you to go check Blue Sky for like a quarter second, and you are going to find them not only coming out of the woodworks, but you're going to find them damn near everywhere, just having a gay old time. The I told you so's are quite prevalent right now. And there is a matter of I told you so here. Like if a victim comes forward about a thing and you make a judgment call, you perform an action based on assuming that that victim is not telling the truth, and then it comes out that the person is actually the monster that they're saying they are. Like, Sean Helvin says, I made another joke about the origin of smog was smog from certain liberals. Said David Pakman's doing the told you victory lap on Platner at the moment. Yeah, and so here's the thing. The told you victory lap, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now, is fucking stupid. It is literally just the attempt from people who want to say that they are more moral than you. That's what it is. Again, this is where the Evangelion congratulations meme is going to be a thing that I'm going to start inserting into my channel. Because of this. Because of that, exactly. Like, congratulations, you were more correct on a thing than I was, on a thing where we both had an amount of information that was incomplete. But let's go ahead and see here. Cyberchill says this is a different situation. I don't know how to apply that to this. When Cyberchill says, I personally don't think contracts can be binding if they were made when one person is under the influence. Right. But the difference is, remember, hold on. Marco saying, I'll be honest, I've been finding the reverse. A lot of leftists angrily going, it took this long while liberals are being smug. What? I guess only angels are allowed, you leftist snowflakes. See, I've seen opposite of that on Blue Sky. But then again, remember that things like Blue Sky, things like Twitter, we have our own individual algorithms built into those, our own individual circles built into those. So there is a chance that in the circles that you are seeing the opposite, and in the circles that I am in, I am seeing the opposite of you. That is very likely, I would assume, that is what's happening there.
It was a night where him and I were texting back and forth, and he had taken something that I said as an invitation. And that's not how I meant it, and I quickly clarified. And he sent a message back indicating that he would come over. And I said, no, don't come over. Like, I'm not in the mood, don't come over. And I was more stern with that message. And then I didn't hear back from him. So I thought that meant he got the message or gave up on it or whatnot. And so like half an hour later, I heard a noise outside my door.
Hold on. Local says this is weird because Platner would be closer to liberal in his origin and temper than he initially is to leftist. So you would have thought liberals would have been more patient with him. I don't understand the dogpiling. So I do understand the dogpiling. I actually do understand the dogpiling a lot. And this is... Let me throw it out to you and see if maybe I can make it make sense to you. So the reason that the dogpiling will be happening, think about it from the liberal side. Regardless of how much patience the liberal side would like to have, the purity testing Ouroboros of everything on the left side of things is going to do what it wants to do. And there is nothing that we hate more on the left than a rapist. Like, just take every possible thing a person can be. A rapist is probably at the very top of like the things that we have a problem with, that conversely, strangely, the right wing does not have a problem with. They will say they have a problem with it, but then they elect a convicted rapist into office as the president of the United States. So, like, if there is one divide between us and the Republicans, it's that we tend to take rape a lot more seriously. There's a reason why the Believe Women Me Too movement happened, like, very, very centered in the left wing of politics and was fought against more by the right wing of politics. It's the special situation where there's a lot of assholery that can be excused, but the assholery that cannot be excused is rape.
And then he he came in. He just came into my house. It was unlocked. I live in an area where you don't usually have to lock your doors. I do now. So he came in and I realized, okay, he didn't listen. He's in my home. And I was laying on the couch. It was probably pretty late at night and I was already ready for bed. I just wasn't in bed. And so he had kind of like jumped on top of me and indicated that he had intentions that were sexual in nature. And I remember just at first being like, hey.
So that would be a horrifying situation. I just want to throw that out to you. Your door opens, a person who you think you can trust comes in, and suddenly you are being assaulted. There are a few situations that are scarier than that to a woman. Like, there are the nightmare scenarios of like walking out in the city, but when it's your own home, when it's a place that is your shelter, when it's a place that you are supposed to feel safe in, it is a place where you are supposed to feel most comfortable in, and that is the place where the violation happens. If it did happen, that is the horror. That is one of the most horrifying parts of that, is having it happen in your sanctuary so that when you exist in your own home, you can't unsee the things that have happened to you.
I'm not into this. Like, I'm not in the mood. Like, don't, whatever. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I feel like I've said this enough times. Like, he's not listening to me or he's not hearing me. And I looked at him and I remember this very specific look in his eyes. And I could smell alcohol and I was like, this is different. He is heavily intoxicated. Like, and that blank stare was kind of like a photographic memory that I still have of that night. And that was me recognizing what the situation was. And this wasn't just like, oh, hey, somebody showed up and I'm going to tell him to go home. Like, he was heavily intoxicated, had intentions with me, and wasn't listening when I said no. And
you were saying, no, don't, over and over.
I remember, obviously I've had to recall a lot of this. This is something that I tried for many years to forget. And so small details, might.
That part is valid. So I've actually had this, not that I've been sexually assaulted, but I have had this experience where traumatic events in my life, my brain has memory hold certain bits of it in order to, it's literally your brain trying to protect you. It's literally your brain trying to say, hey, if I focus on this too long, I'm going to shut down. So I'm going to put it in a bucket somewhere else, somewhere far away. So that actually is consistent with how we tend to process trauma.
Get past me, but yes, I remember very specifically saying, I'm not into this. In my message previously, I had told him I had had an old back injury, and I remember saying, like, I'm not in this. I've had a long day. My back hurts. Like I was in that kind of mood, like the leave me alone mood. And there was a little bit of like scuffle, like altercation. The house that I live in has like this antique sewing kit that I kept beside the couch, and that got knocked over. He like backed into it, or something was maybe pushed into it by me, or something happened in that moment, and that thing got spilled. And
do you remember pushing him away?
I remember potentially pushing away with my legs, like, and then as he backed into it, it spilt, and all of the sewing needles and tape and yarn and everything went everywhere. Everything had fallen onto the floor, and in that moment, I evaluated my safety. Like, a drunk person who's blackout drunk is in my home, has these intentions with me, has already caused this amount of destruction and not listening to me. And so I basically felt safe as just complying.
You normally use protection.
Yeah.
And this time he didn't.
No.
And you didn't want that.
No.
And he didn't care.
No, I don't think my words were falling on deaf ears or drunk ears.
And you were still saying, don't do this, or I'm not into this?
I remember specifically him like grabbing at my chest, and I like hit his hand and I said, don't touch me. And I remember that during the altercation. And specifically.
Then he kept going.
Yeah, and it was this weird mix of like coming in and out of don't think consciousness is the word, but like coming to and kind of falling back into that drunken, I don't know what I'm doing state.
So, just real quick, I actually wanted to pull this up here for people who may not understand how the blackout drunk thing works. So, this is a PowerPoint, not one that I made, but it goes over the details of how this works. You have two types of shutdown from being drunk. One is pass out, one is blackout. Passing out, you lose consciousness, you go to sleep, quote, quote. It's not very restful, but you do. Blacking out, complex and specific neurological phenomenon, interruptions of hippocampus activity. The hippocampus and alcohol, a part of the brain most scientists believe is linked to learning and memory. So because the blackout affects the hippocampus, the memory will actually be affected completely, which means if this did happen and he was in fact blackout drunk, then like we actually do have evidence that that is how the brain would have processed part of this. Can interrupt any formation of new memories, can have a chronic effect on alcoholics, and we know that Platner has said that he used to have a major alcohol problem. Blackout effects. Interrupted hippocampus activity interferes with the ability to form new long-term memories, leaves intact the ability to keep new information active in memory for brief periods. You might remember small things, but only during the blackout. Remember, she's pointing out that there were like little tiny flashes, like itty-bitty flashes of lucidity during this before everything flashes back to being blackout. That's what this is happening. That's the brain saying, hey, there's a short-term memory. We're going to access it. Okay, cool. Now it's filed away. And then suddenly you're back to autopilot. Impairment increases with consumption, leaves intact previously established long-term memories. So you remember that you're in a relationship with somebody. You remember where they live. You have every memory of that. You may even have a conversation like about blanket consent. And you remember that, and so you take actions based on that. Blackout use by the defense. This is about when it's used in a court of law. Blackout use by the defense. The specter may be raised to suggest the victim consented during the effects and does not remember doing so. So this is about a victim getting blackout drunk, specifically, not the perpetrator being blackout drunk, specifically. So the situation here is a little different, because this PowerPoint is about the usage of blackout alcohol as a defense for in a court of law when you are trying to say that somebody was blackout drunk, therefore, when a rape occurred, something, please get the rapist off of getting in trouble.
And yeah, and he would apologize in those moments and then go back to doing what he was doing.
Again, that's consistent with blackout drunk. You get small minutes of short-term memory where your brain catches back up and then it goes back into the bottle.
So he was aware that he was doing something wrong
Yeah.
and saying sorry.
I feel like he was.
Maybe. It's a maybe. So if we are being consistent with how blackout drunk works, if we are talking about full blackout drunkenness, whether or not he's even able to consent in that situation is iffy. But again, he's the one doing the assault, so that complicates things, makes it far worse for him. Even if he is dimly aware that he should not be doing something, the way that the blackout drunk works is he's only going to be dimly aware of that for a quarter second. And then, again, the brain goes back into the bottle.
In moments.
Is there any way that he thought this was consensual or no? Just because...
I don't believe that you can think that.
It depends on how much thinking was actually happening. Remember, he's got access to long-term memory. Short-term memory is spotty and only comes back in small waves, which means even if you send him a message saying that don't come over, if he's blackout drunk, there's a chance that the brain filed that in short-term memory and then threw it in the bucket before it went back into the blackout mode. So again, this is why I don't fucking drink, guys. Like, this is why I don't fucking drink, okay? I never want to have this conversation get strange and weird and problematic. Jesus Christ.
Scenario was consensual. You have to understand that wasn't when somebody is repeatedly, when somebody in the middle of it says, don't touch me, like, that's obviously not consensual.
Especially if he's apologizing on occasion.
Yeah. And that next morning, so after everything ended, I ran to the bathroom, which is just beside my bedroom. And I was in there for a while and just trying to comprehend things. Like,
Were you crying? Were you?
I honestly I don't think I was crying. I was like more in shock and yeah, just trying to understand.
Yeah. So another thing to note, this is from the criminal law firm. Key takeaways from Edward Henderson's criminal law firm. Alcohol does not create consent. Being drunk does not excuse sexual assault. So that's one of the reasons why I pointed out, even if he could not truly consent to the things that were happening in his own fucking brain, he still hurt somebody. Like, you don't erase that. That doesn't disappear magically simply because you're under the effects of alcohol. Cybershield says if they were both drunk and it was so long ago, there may not be enough evidence. However, I do believe she's telling what she believes to be the truth so far during this interview. Remember, though, that during this, she has not stated that she was drunk. There has not been a moment in here where she has stated that she was ever under the influence of alcohol. So as far as she is concerned, her memory was as good as it could be for somebody whose memory hold bits for because of trauma. Because she was not drunk as well as far as we understand. Yeah, she has not claimed being drunk. She has not claimed she was not. But as far as we can tell from the information provided, as far as she has said, we can assume that she was lucid the entire time. Not necessarily drunk. And she's only blamed the bits that have been memory hold as trauma coping mechanism, not as a thing that was belabored by alcohol. Consent requires capacity. Intoxication can remove the ability to understand, choose, or withdraw from agreement at any time. Miralana says he consented to the intoxication that led to the assault. It's kind of like felony murder. If you bring about the circumstances that lead to a crime, you're culpable in the crime. So Miralana, that's not actually how this works. Because what you're describing is closer to manslaughter. A person consents to getting behind a car. There is a chance when they get behind a car that a bad thing can happen, and so they do that. So, like, if a person is a struggling alcoholic, in no uncertain terms, ever, would anybody who has been involved in alcoholism a rehabilitation accept your framing of how rabid alcoholism works? Because if a person has a problem with alcohol, an addiction problem, it is closer to a disease than it is to something that they can just say, I'm not going to drink today. Like, once somebody has developed the habit, and again, this is a person who was ex-military, a lot of times they use alcohol as a coping mechanism for PTSD. By the way, that is consistent with what he has said as well. He used alcohol to self-medicate for his PTSD, and it developed his alcoholism. Miralana says, I agree in terms of health and mental health, but I'm speaking legally. So, okay. Felony murder, if you bring about the circumstances that lead to felony murder, but that is the reason I'm saying it's closer to manslaughter, and maybe somebody who has a better legal background than me can correct me, but I think it is closer to manslaughter because taking a drink of alcohol is not an action that one should assume will lead to a problem. Getting behind a car is not an action that one can take that they should assume will lead to a problem. For it to be felony murder, there needs to be intent. That's kind of what is legally part of murder. So, like, if you're hiring a hitman, for instance, if you are supplying a weapon and you know that somebody is, like, they have straight up told you they're planning on using it to harm a person, those are situations where that is the case because intent was there. You intentionally ignored information. You intentionally engaged in an action. Manslaughter is you did not intend for that to happen, and yet it did. It does not absolve him of the sin of doing it. It does not mean that he should not be having responsibility for it. Okay. Furlana says, felony murder is specifically if, say, you are committing another crime, say theft, and someone dies because of it. Murder and felony murder are different. Right. But if you are committing theft, you are accepting that there is a high likelihood that violence will occur from that. Drinking alcohol is not a crime. Drinking alcohol is not something that you should assume would cause that. Like, that's the difference. Those are very different things. Now, we can look up case law real quick and see if that has been the case. So, as an example, let's see what case law we can find on this. So in case law, you voluntarily choose to be intoxicated. The law places the risk of your impaired judgment on you rather than on the potential victims. That makes sense. Specific intent crimes. Some form of premeditated murder or burglary may allow evidence of intoxication to argue that the defendant couldn't form the required intent. Many states have limited or abolished this defense, however. General intent crimes, like assault, usually are not excused by intoxication. There we are. If someone kills another person under blackout drunkenness, prosecutors argue, they do not argue that they were too drunk to know what they were doing. Instead, they ask whether the legal elements of homicide are satisfied despite the intoxication. In terms of culpability, it is closer to manslaughter than felony murder, but not because of legal doctrine being the same. Manslaughter involves recklessness, criminal negligence, and loss of self-control. That's manslaughter. Felony murder, someone intentionally commits a dangerous felony like robbery or kidnapping. That's the example you gave. A death occurs during the felony. The intent to commit the felony substitutes for the intent to kill. Okay, so we are in manslaughter territory then. We are not in felony murder territory because the loss of self-control and the recklessness falls under manslaughter. Felony murder, you need to have intentionally done a crime that would lead to the other thing. And then that replaces intent in criminal law. Subnarch says, is it the same as third-degree murder? Not sure, but I've gotten the information that I've got the information that satisfies my curiosity on it. I do not want my Google search to be filled with various forms of how to rape do. No, I'm good. I've gotten what I need. I'm already on a list now. Orla says, so sexual assault, not hard R. Yeah, so at that point, assault, not rape, maybe, but we're not even arguing assault, not rape. We're arguing just even in the baseline, did person do thing, and are they responsible for thing? Miralana says, sorry for getting you on a list. You're fine. You're fine. I'm already on one, probably.
Like what had just happened, especially like this is a person I have known and have trusted and have had very consensual relationships with. Like,
Hold on.
What had just happened, especially like this was a person I trusted. And so I spent a little bit of time in the bathroom, and when I came back out...
Sephi says, but would that make you an accessory? Yeah, this is where you're going to have to Google and get yourself on the list. Sorry.
He was asleep in my bed. And at that point, I didn't know what my options were. Like, obviously, I don't want this person in my house. And when I, earlier had realized how drunk he was, I knew that he had driven over that way. Like, I'm surprised he made it to my house. And if I woke him up and sent him home, like, I am now making the decision to put somebody that drunk on the road. And I didn't want to live with the fact that, like, if he got into an accident or hurt somebody else. And I remember thinking that I could tell him to leave, and I could call the police immediately, and I could at least get him caught for drunk driving.
Okay, so, man, the asshole response to that is that that's what you should have done. Just no holds barred, that is what you should have done, period. But, on the other hand, this is somebody you obviously cared about. This is somebody that you did not necessarily want to see in a jail cell with their life ruined because they made a mistake that hurt you a fuck ton. A lot of times when it is a loved one, we have either impaired judgment or we have a different method of classifying our actions. So I don't know if I would have made the call were it me, but again, cis male, so very different scenario. I don't know if I would make the call to willingly be inside my own home with the person who had sexually assaulted me. I also don't know if I wouldn't have taken the action of, like, saying what Cyberchill is saying, calling a taxi, calling a ride, anything to get him out of the house. But at the same time, if you tried to call a taxi to get him out of the house, then there's a chance that he would argue with you about being able to drive out instead. So there's a risk involved there. There's a very big risk involved there. So I can't make an evaluation there. Because while the thing that my brain is screaming, which is somebody had assaulted you, they're in your house, leave, get to safety, this is a person who has assaulted you, call the police, get them involved, get them out of your house. Those are the things that scream in my head, but unless I'm the one in the situation, I can't make that judgment call, and that judgment call is going to have way too much information determining whether or not I should do anything at all there. So I can't make any judgment calls there. I can't. Like, as far as I know, she did everything that she possibly could do in the situation that made her feel safest with her own actions.
So I was like, I'm going to let him sleep and the second he wakes up, I'm going to tell him to leave. And so he slept. I lay
Clutzy's
there
around. Thank you for the follow.
panic all night. And I remember turning on, I have like one of those noise machines that you sleep with, and I turn it on ocean waves, and I'm like, I'll just try to meditate. And it didn't work. So in the morning, he woke up and he went to go put his arm around me. And I was like, whoa. And realizing this person doesn't know that what happened wasn't okay. And so I remember taking his arm and throwing it back at him. And I said, are you fucking serious, Graham? And he's like, what? And I'm like, do you not remember what happened last night? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay, I need you to get dressed and leave and never talk to me again. Like, nothing that happened was okay. And he did. He just got up and got dressed and left and didn't seem concerned.
He didn't ask you.
He didn't ask me a single question. And I mean, in the moment, I was like not wanting to talk about it anyway. So maybe I felt fine about that in the moment. But like, I was still like, how can somebody that you've been in some type of a relationship with for this long tells you to never speak to you again about something that you did, and you didn't even ask what you did. So he left.
So it depends on the person. So you could be in a situation where I don't know what their relationship was like before. I don't know how mentally stable she was or not before. I don't know how mentally stable Platner was or not before. But what I do know is that there have been situations where I've been in an abusive relationship. And in that relationship, when somebody told me something that I had done wrong, I learned to stop asking the thing that I did wrong, and I learned to accept it as a matter of self-preservation. Like, that is a habit that I learned in order to maintain the peace of my own self. And that got me in a lot of trouble. That wrecked my fucking life for a time. But there is a chance that that could be what happened with him. Maybe he's got a learned behavior where somebody says a thing and you just accept it and go, okay, fine. I'm not going to try to argue against this. But again, I don't know what their situation was like. I don't know if they had a relationship that had those problems. I have no way of knowing. So again, I just have to assume that the information that we're being given is truthful. He assaulted her. He was blackout drunk. The blackout drunkenness means that he is as culpable for his actions as one would be during a manslaughter charge. She did the actions that she felt she would be able to do in order to keep herself preserved and safe without causing too much undue trauma to herself and others. However, statute of limitations in Maine is 8 years. There is a thing here where she should have tried to act like, okay, so once this is out in the open, the question has to become, why are you putting this out in the open instead of going through channels? At the same time, police are corrupt as shit, so going through the proper channels may actually not be proper.
He didn't talk.
Clutzy, thank you for subscribing.
And I waited a couple weeks because I knew that with what had happened, I could have gotten pregnant, and I wanted to wait and make sure that wasn't
Meteor
the case.
Golem!
And so I waited until that happened, and I sent him kind of like a final send-off message. And
What did it say?
I remember a few pieces of it.
So this is the message that she claimed she deleted. As much as I can believe that everything happened up to this point, the fact that uniquely the messages between her and Platner do not exist, I struggle to believe what she says, the message says, in any way, shape, or form. Only because I've had a personal experience where somebody claimed that bad things were happening to them, and they said it was happening via email, and then when I asked about those emails, they then would say that, oh, they deleted them as a matter of, like, operational security or some shit. And at that point, it's Boy Who Cried Wolf at that point. Where I'm just like, I can't believe the things you are saying when the evidence that you could present to me simply ceases to exist. Like, I could even believe it more before I asked for the evidence, but now that I've asked for it and it's not, now it's weird. Intergalactic Elena says, I was in an abusive relationship for a while and deleting messages was a way to try to move past the trauma at times. That is a point in favor as well. That's a point in favor of her as well. I had not personally considered that. I am speaking mostly from the frustrated perspective of somebody who has dealt with this kind of claim before. and found out later that that person was a perpetual liar.
And I remember saying that like nothing that happened that night was okay or consensual. And I waited on Instagram. You see when it says seen. And so I gave it a couple days. It said that it was seen, and I still didn't hear back out. And at that point, I blocked him on everything. I deleted his number. I blocked and deleted his like text phone number as well, because text and Instagram are, I think, the two ways that we had communication.
Also, if you block, it doesn't necessarily delete everything, depending on the platform. So you could just block, and then that information, you wouldn't see that information anymore.
And I've never heard from him since.
Cyberchill says, I think that if what she's saying is true, and I have no reason to doubt her claims, she doesn't have enough evidence for it in a legal sense. However, I want to know his side as well. If he feels it never happened and is denying it, if he's unsure if it happened and is panicking, or believes her, which I don't think she'd come forward like this if he believed her claims and felt horrible about it. Right, so remember that, like, her perspective on this was, I am coming forward about this because I do not think that Graham Platner is a trustworthy person, and she doesn't believe he's a trustworthy person because of this incident, because he, in her exact words in the Politico article, he is consensually reckless, is the words that she used.
He posted a comment on Reddit about a video promoting underwear designed to prevent rape. And he wrote, quote,
okay, no, you don't get to use that shit from 2013. I'm sorry, no. We're not doing the stupid fucking liberal bullshit of, oh, let's find out something weird that you said 10 fucking years ago, and let's hold you to the fire for, fuck off, die. No, absolutely fucking not. Even in the world where I believe every single thing she is saying, and I think he's the worst person on the goddamn planet, holding somebody to the fire for something they said 13 years ago when they have expressly made their entire platform, I am not that person anymore, that person was a horrible person, congratulations. As far as you know, they have already learned that lesson and gone off to be a different person. Fuck off and stop with that shit. I hate this fucking shit. This is the Twitter liberal shit. I have gotten so goddamn tired of this exact fucking thing. I remember years ago on Facebook, so I used to use the r slur a lot. When I was younger, because a lot of us did. And I remember my mom having a disagreement with somebody. And it was somebody who I had met at a convention. And I responded to them like, hey, that's my mom. Could you maybe stop being an asshole? And their response was to dig into my past Facebook posts from 7 years ago to find a photo where I had taken a picture of a deer that I had hit with my car. And the deer had ran in front of the car and caused the front of my car to break, because deer are very solid. And I used the R slur in reference to the deer. And they pulled that up and they were like, actually, I don't think I have to take any suggestions from somebody who uses language like this. So, like, that was 7 fucking years ago, you absolute piece of horse trash. Like, no. I'm so goddamn tired of the fucking holier than thou. You said something 10 years ago. Yeah, people are different people 10 years ago, you fucking piece of shit. And that is me, even if I were accepting everything she said about Platner to be true, which I am leaning on doing. That is still my perspective on that. That shit pisses me the fuck off. I think every single purity tester on the internet just rot. Just rot.
Rape is a real thing. If you're so worried about it to buy Kevlar underwear, you'd think you might not get blacked out, fucked up around people you aren't comfortable with.
Again, so, is that a shitty thing to say? Yes, that's the kind of thing you would expect somebody to say in a rape culture. By the way, definitionally, we live in a rape culture. So, yeah, shitty thing to say. Very horrible. But holding somebody's feet to the fire about that 13 years later, when, as far as we know, we have evidence of him being a different person with different rhetoric and different ways of operating, I'm sorry. So the reason we hold Trump to task for shit like the Epstein files is because we know that he's not a different person. We know he's not a better person. He's not improved, and he's not going to improve. That's not what's happening with him, ever. So we hold his feet to the fire for opinions that he had years ago and things he said years ago because he still says them today. He still gloats about being able to diddle girls today. He did it during his 2016 campaign, when he said, "Oh, when you're a superstar, they let you do anything." We hold his feet to the fire because the person he is right now is still consistent with everything he said before. If that is not the case, I just... Take Hunter Abalone. Hunter Abalone did an entire leftward swerve, to the point where it even, like, destroyed his channel the way it originally was. If I were to make a video on Hunter Abalone from 10 years ago, and I were to try to hold his feet to the fire for that, I'd be a fucking dick. That would be a stupid fucking thing to do, because I know he's not that person now. He ceased being that person a long time ago. And I know that because after I did several videos on him, I had him on my channel for a conversation about how he had been changing. Anyway, I think we hold people to the fire for the shitty people that they are, not the shitty people that they have been. We never let them forget the shitty people that they have been so that they never have an excuse to backslide, but we don't hold their feet to the fire for it anymore.
Right.
What did you think when you saw that?
I thought, here's a man who was drunk and who, by dictionary definition, raped me, and he's blaming drunk women. So I just felt like that was a very odd take to have on that.
Again, the person who he was when he had that take and the person who he was when the situation happened to you could also have been different. I don't know what his relationship with alcohol was in 2013 when he made that comment. As far as I remember, it was made that comment. But at the same time, like, we can all agree, every single one of us can agree, blaming another woman for being drunk for assault that happens on her is the kind of thing that a person who would rape would say. So 2013 Platner did rape apologetics. Like, that is an unequivocal thing to say. Like, it is a true thing to say that past Platner of past 10 years ago engaged in rape apologetics. That's what that is, definitionally. So that's a bad look, Platner. It's a bad look, Platner, for things he said when he was a different person, even by his own definition. Like, we can all agree it's horrible, it's terrible, but if that's not consistent with who he is right now, then let me see here. Did he actually say anything about that again, or are we just gonna ignore anything he said after that? Yeah, that's what it's looking like over there. Okay. And
I also feel like with all of the comments that he made about women, sexual assault, rape, even, the comments that he had made that was in the New York Times article about, threatening people with rape, like, why does this person have this issue, like, scattered throughout their life, throughout their commentary, like it's on their mind? Why do they have such a strong opinion about women coming forward with allegations? Like, I just feel like this isn't the first time.
I know that you have been...
So he's gone on record to apologize for the offensive comments he's made about sexual assault. He's gone on record apologizing for suggesting victims should take responsibility for themselves. He's even straight up said that a lot of those behaviors were part of a dark period in his life where he was struggling with undiagnosed PTSD. Doesn't excuse the things he said, but you need full context to make judgment calls.
Very reluctant to tell this story.
Yeah.
Very reluctant. Why did you ultimately decide to do it? Why come forward?
A few reasons. One of the biggest ones is that I think that there are a lot of men in this world relying on the silence of women.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And to be where they are. And I don't want to contribute to that. I also want to just get my life back.
There are going to be people, maybe even his campaign, certainly his supporters, who say this is politically motivated. What would you say to that?
I couldn't disagree more.
I'm sorry, but you would not be talking to the news about it if he were not a political candidate about to seize power. Two things can be true. Everything that happened, and he should be held to the flames for doing the actions he did. And also, the information coming out at the time that it's coming out is politically motivated. It is. Both of those things can, and I believe probably are, true.
It was actually one of the reasons that I didn't come out.
Okay.
You know, and I felt like me coming forward would essentially potentially take that away. And I felt really uncomfortable with the responsibility of and the weight of my story and what that might do.
When people hear this from you, are you saying you should not vote for him because of what happened?
I'm not going to go as far as to say that. I'm just here to tell my story, to give a clearer picture of who he is and the type of past that he has. And I just think it's fair to the democratic process to let people know who they're voting for.
This has obviously been very difficult for you to talk about for 5 years.
Old Gus says, back to the political question, he's a politician, I'm not. Part of being a politician is being held to a moral standard, and my story has some weight in that moral measure. That's... Old Gus is saying that in response to... Oh, he's blaming drunk women. It's a common rape culture defense tactic. Rapists have twisted morals. This isn't something you ask rapists about. It is something for therapists. Yeah, and I agree. I agree. Kinma says, because often does the situation look unfair to naive men. Many have been thinking of situations like this as guilty before proving innocent, because that's what it initially looks like without deeper contemplation. But, like, see, it's not even trying to determine guilt. It's just trying to determine if somebody was hurt. Because, like, if we were trying to deal with guilt as hard as we possibly could, then we might be trying to look at, like, allegations. How to answer, what do you say to people who say this is politically motivated? Say he's a politician, I'm not. Part of being a politician is being held to a moral standard, and my story has some weight to the moral measure. Yeah, and I can agree with that. That's why I said even early in this recording that we would not hold most people to the standard that they should air out all of their dirty laundry as soon as they meet you or while they're having conversations with you. But at the same time, when it's a politician who is going to have weighty decisions about the course of your life, the life of your loved ones and your children, then, not that those are different people, but, you know, for some people they are. When that is the case, then you do have to scrutinize them further because they have more weight to their positions.
And even when you're telling the story, you don't use the word.
Yeah.
So let me just be, and I apologize, let me be as direct as I can. Did Graham Platner rape you?
By definition, yes. Absolutely.
Because he had not.
So, by definition, he penetrated her. He did so without her consent. He entered her home without her consent. This meets sexual assault, it meets rape, it meets them in the legal sense, and it would meet them by our definitions, because, like, I don't think that a penis should be required for rape to be a thing. I think that once you have started doing something to somebody that they are not consenting to in that situation, then there's that. Like, that's... If it's fingers, I'm still calling it rape.
Consensual sex with you.
Yeah.
Forced himself on you. Even after you had told him no and fought him off.
Yeah. He violated multiple layers of consent that night by coming into my home when I asked him not to, and by advancing on me when I told him not to. And furthermore, another incident that I had told him not to do. And
with protection.
Yeah. So, yeah. By the way that my nervous system reacted to this experience, absolutely.
There are going to be Democrats who say, I believe you, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for him anyway. Because we need a progressive voice in the United States Senate. Are you going to...
I do want to point out the Republican Party votes in rapists. There are two arguments here. Argument one, we are better than them, so we should not vote in rapists. Argument two, bringing in Susan Collins as incumbent instead of putting a Democrat in there helps perpetuate a culture where rapists can get away with things, because a culture where we erode women's rights is a culture where it is less safe for women, and a culture that is a direct byproduct of having more Republicans in office. Those are your two sides there. For me, I struggle to justify voting for somebody if I know that they have done the horrible things that I hold the president to fire for. If a Democrat were on Epstein Island, I would not say they deserve power simply because we need more blue seats. That would be a ludicrous argument. And so I think it's a ludicrous argument here. I think if we are looking at this situation as objectively as possible, there are two outcomes. There's three outcomes. One outcome is he drops out. And he drops out because of the pressure or because of shame. It doesn't matter, he drops out. And we have to get another Democrat in that spot with very little time for them to get any momentum behind them, and Susan Collins wins. Scenario two, he stays in, and this becomes the biggest smear on his life even more so for staying in, and Susan Collins wins because people decide not to vote for him because of this coming out. The other scenario is he wins, and something very simple is communicated to women at that point. And that very simple thing that gets communicated to women is that the Democratic Party now tolerates rapists. And that can have a bunch of scary domino effects down the line as a result of that. I am unsure which of those, all of those scenarios feel horrible. All of those scenarios feel bad. Maybe there's another scenario that I'm not thinking about, but the one where he drops out and we keep the Republican, bad. The one where he stays in and we get the Republican, bad. The one where he stays in and we have more blue power, but we inadvertently communicate to women that the Democratic Party is not actually safe for them, bad. Cyberchill says, there we go. I'd say we need more evidence to prove it happened in a court of law, statements from neighbors, etc., and needs to be taken seriously. And also accept that this could be politically motivated. It's certainly a messy situation. Right. I'm of the opinion that it likely, to her recollection, to her version of events, I don't believe she is lying about those. Now, whether some of those details change things, I don't know, but I do not believe she is lying when she talks about this. And I can also believe that Graham Platner's not lying when he says he doesn't have a recollection of it even happening. That's consistent with how Blackout Drunk works. I can also, while accepting that she did this, that she is not lying about her situation, I can also accept the situation where she is doing so for political reasons right now. Dorita says, if she was lying, this means she was planning this for years, even before Platner was a public name. No, not necessarily, Dorito. Not necessarily. So, okay, just as an example, I will throw a hypothetical person at you, and I want you to tell me if this person exists. A person who claims that assault happened to them when it did not happen. Put in that bucket whether you believe that person can or cannot exist, and then I want to add another addendum to that person. Person who says that assault happened when it did not happen, and claims that the assault happened in order to gain something, whether it is sympathy, whether it is pity, whether it is some neurological issue in the brain. Does that person exist? That person is less likely to exist as an addendum to the previous person, but that person does and can exist. Which means there is a world where this is not her planning to politically suicide Platner the entire time. In the world where she is lying about this, it is equally likely that the same way a hypochondriac can believe that they have a sickness that they do not, her brain may have reconstructed events in a way that they did not necessarily happen. Dorito said, can exist. Both examples, my previous statement is that there are emails this lady provided that were dated years ago, is what I meant. Right. So, I would also like to point out, I have myself witnessed a person in therapy lie to the therapist's face, and the therapist operate with that information, despite it being a flat-out lie, and me finding out through digging through their military documents that they were lying to the therapist to their face. That person can exist. I have seen that person exist, and there doesn't need to be any necessarily long-term planning for it. However, that is not my position. My position is I believe she's telling the truth. I believe that the version of events that she has described to us is likely what happened. It is consistent with how blackout drunkenness works. It is consistent with the timeline where Graham Platner was struggling with alcohol. It is consistent with when they were together. Bree says, yeah, I knew they were out there and knew a woman like that. I am sorry that you knew one as well. That is terrifying. I would hope that fewer people are like that in the world, because I have met at least one. And it's terrifying to think about even today. But I do believe that she is telling the truth. I do not have enough moving parts that work against her other than the deleted messages and lack of evidence to assume that she's not telling the truth at the very least. Kinma says, even if she was lying, the damage done and proof wouldn't be completely accepted. He should drop out and the next candidate needs to have as much support as possible so they can't be a DNC pick. It's not going to happen, though. If without any momentum behind them, they're just going to lose. Like, I think that accepting that seat is gone, and we need to focus on other areas around the country more, I think that's where we are. Even if he decides to stick around, I think we accept that seat is gone. As far as I know, he's deciding to stick around. He hasn't said anything about not doing so. Could be wrong.
Be okay with that? Are you going to be able to handle that? I'm not saying it's the right answer or the right response, but...
No, I have friends who feel that way. And that's been a hard pill to swallow. And I guess I need to not ask, potentially. Maybe I need to not ask in order to not care what they do. I understand. I understand that the state of our political environment is so much so that we need a lot of change. And
so if you want somebody who has far more weight and far more experience with this to give you their opinion on this, the opinion of Senator Bernie Sanders right now is that Platner should drop out. Today, he has become the most notable lawmaker to pull support from Graham Platner. I don't know what weight that adds to you, but I tend to think that Bernie's got a fairly good head on his shoulders.
And he's offering that change. And, I'm not mad at anyone who has voted for him all along. If he wasn't who he was, I would be voting for him as well. And going forward, I don't know what's going to happen.
There's something you said that I just want to find out more about.
Mm-hmm.
You said he was forcing himself on you. It was getting violent. You were pushing him off. You were kicking him off. Needle.
Tal says, didn't we talk about this yesterday, that the guy was running on a platform of redemption from a dark past? Yes, we did, but we had not listened to the victim's testimony at the time because the testimony on video came out after I was done with my stream. The testimony here seems to suggest... Okay, so there's two worlds. Kinma says not redemption from this. I disagree, but I also... Okay. I think that one of the few things that somebody cannot be redeemed from is assaulting a child. I think with enough time and change, most people can become better versions of themselves, if not wholly different people in the future. However, I think politically, like I said earlier, the thing that is communicated to women here, if he gets in, is the Democrats are okay with voting in a rapist. Cut and dry, that's exactly the message that comes down to more than half of the Democratic voters, not only in Maine, but in the country. That's not the kind of message that you want the party that is supposed to be the one that is fighting for women's rights to have. I believe that he is likely not the person now that he was then. And that also comes with the implicit belief as well that he probably would not do this again with the limited information that I have. That does not mean that I think he should currently hold power, because there's a lot that is communicated with that decision that is awful. Even if he is the best person possible for the seat, the domino effect from that feels infinitely more damaging than having one more blue seat would accomplish, I think. Maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe I'm looking at this too analytically. Dorito says, honestly, kind of hate that we can't say a rapist is better than a pedophile rapist with this. Old Gus says, really, hasn't it been only 5 years? Yeah. Do you not believe that a person can change in 5 years? I believe 5 years is enough for a person to change. I believe there's a monumental amount of change that can happen in a person's life and to a person's perception in that amount of time. My problem is, without access to his own brain, I don't know if he is a different person than the person who did this. I don't. I have no way of evaluating that. I have no way of demonstrating that. can either accept his words or not accept his words. But the Democrats bringing in a person who all evidence seems to suggest did a horrible deed like this. Old Gus says, they can learn new things, sure. Changing morals and moral values, less so. So, Old Gus, the reason I disagree is I know who I was in 2014, and I know who I was in 2018. And I know that 2014 me and 2018 me would be enemies. Actual enemies. Necrochild says, did the allegations come out before or after he ran for office? The allegations came out after he ran for office, but the conversations with her therapist and her ex-partner about the assault are dated to before he ran for office. So, bit of column A, bit of column B. Like, I will be perfectly honest. I know the kinds of things that I believed. I know the kinds of things that I said years ago. I know the kind of person that I was. I have friends who have known me for decades, or a little over a decade, rather. And I have had those friends in no uncertain terms. Actually, one of them did know me for decades. I have had those friends tell me the exact words multiple times, you aren't the person you were before. I had a person who stopped being my friend because of the person I was before and became my friend again later when they saw me change into a different person. And I have another friend who has stuck with me through thick and thin throughout most of my time knowing them over a decade. And they have also said, like, the person that I was then was tolerable at best in comparison to who I am today. I understand if somebody does not have the perspective or the opinion that that is how fast a person can change, but I don't consider 5 years a fast amount of time. Tazor says, something, is it better to be born good or to overcome your own evil through great effort, something. I think it's better to have overcome evil. But then again, I have the bias of being me. Justice is back from therapy. A big lesson I learned is people need to be vetted before running. Graham didn't have something like the DSA backing or vetting him from what I am seeing. They have a candidate named Troy something, but Platner has a week to drop out. These will be interesting couple of months. Gid says, with the right catalysts, things can change quickly. It depends on the situation. The BoJack Horseman effect. JK, BoJack only went to rehab a few months. Robbie says it starts with sorry. All right, let's finish the video up because this is going to be a long one. This is going to be a very long video, and I'm fairly certain that at the end of this video, I am going to have a bunch of people in my comment section who are going to try to claim, like, Suris, you're being a rape apologist, when this is not the position I came in on at the end of this, but I just accept that I am in a very volatile space of the internet, and people are people. So let's finish this video up. Let's see what's going on, and I feel for this woman.
And sewing equipment was falling all over her. And walk us through the process where you decided that the safest thing you could do was just let him rape you.
Yeah, I had never.
Which, by the way, is not an uncommon thing. Fawning is one of the words we use for that, where it is a safety mechanism for somebody to try to please the people around them, even when they are being horribly abusive. Old Gus says, oh, I need to get back to cooking. Y'all have fun. See ya, Old Gus. Hopefully you're cooking something delicious. But, I mean, you're in Japan, so I assume all the food there is delicious.
Been in that
Except for that fermented bean shit. Just no.
situation before, and I realized, I remember it being
Seffi says, one, rape is not something you let... Seffi? Seffi, we're describing fawning. We're describing fawning. That's... Do you have a therapist, Seffi? Just asking. Because if you do have one, I would suggest asking them about fawning and why that is a thing that happens. Old Gus says, is that a nice way to say deer in the headlights? No. So fawning is a behavior where somebody who has been through abuse recognizes that the people around them stay longer and hurt them less when they do the things that please them. it can go to the extreme of feeling like the safest thing you can do when somebody is trying to assault you is to not fight it off as much as you want, because it is a method of self-preservation. It is a very common thing that happens, and it is one of the things that people try to use as a defense for rapists, like, oh, she obviously wanted it, oh, she obviously liked it, when we know psychologically that is not necessarily what happens all the time. Fennec says, so you're saying that my rape wasn't rape because I genuinely did not feel safe saying no to someone who casually discussed murder and in a house with guns in it and had no way to leave? Yeah, that's why I want you to be very careful with that, Sephi. Like, there are behaviors psychologically that are 100% self-preservation methods that people have to rely on to survive encounters.
Being an instant where I had recognized...
The guy... Sephi, no, that's not what he said at all. He literally said she was raped. He did not say that she let it happen. He said you felt the safest thing you could do was let it happen, which are different statements. The context of the before changes the entirety of the after.
Recognized that he wasn't listening to me. It wasn't just that he wasn't hearing me or whatnot. And then I recognized his level of intoxication, and I knew in that moment I wasn't safe. And I don't think I was safe to physically. Also,
just so you know, so that we know that I'm not pulling a thing out of my booty hole. AI overview, but the AI overview is actually correct on this one. Fawning is an unconscious trauma response where an individual appeases others to avoid conflict, criticism, or harm. It involves extreme people-pleasing, self-sacrifice. A person will suppress their own boundaries, emotion, and identity in order to assure their emotional and physical safety. That's what the behavior is. That's the behavior that you tend to see sometimes in sexual assault victims that need to protect themselves, and their version... link sources to the overview when you can. Yeah, it's in Psychology Today. Here you go. There you are. Hotspot says, some victims shut down mentally and disassociate because it's safer to go limp because the fight means death or harm. Yep. Said Psychology Today. It is Psychology Today, so it's not a straight-up paper, but it is fairly accurate information. So actually, I have a variant of this. And it's not for sexual assault. It is sort of a people-pleasing thing, where I recognize that there's a certain level of conflict that can just lead to being harmed, lead to people abandoning, and to try to keep those people around, I will engage in light fawning behavior to prevent those bad outcomes from happening. It is not a correct thing to do, and I usually don't recognize I'm doing it until afterwards or when somebody tells me I'm doing it, but as abrasive and as aggressive as I can be, it's also a thing that I have done in the past because when I was a child, it helped preserve me. Like, I had a very violent childhood.
Fight back. He's big, he's strong, and I just had to evaluate my safety and come up with the least worst outcome to this situation. And so I felt like complying for my safety was the least worst option.
But that's not consenting.
No, it's not.
Complying is not consent.
Yeah. Complying is not consent. If somebody aims a gun to your head and you know that your options are do what they say or get shot, complying with what they are saying is not consent to the thing.
Complying is letting him rape you.
Is getting it over with.
So that he didn't hurt you even more?
I don't know what this person is capable of. I don't think...
Bear in mind, this is a person who was a military veteran who had also done work for Blackwater, so what this person is capable of is ending a human life with their bare hands. It's just when he said that stuff, I feel like he's implying she let it happen. No, and you can even hear, like, his exact words here show that's not what he's implying.
Anybody does, and even people you know for years and trust, you don't know the depths of what they're capable of. And
you were afraid for your safety.
Yeah, I was afraid for my safety.
Beyond, not that rape isn't a horrific thing, but beyond.
Right.
Rape.
I didn't want to find out how unsafe I could get that night, or how harmed I could be that night.
I know this is probably one of the toughest things you've had to do in your life, so I just want to thank you for trusting us and sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys being here to do this and to help share these stories very kindly and delicately.
So, to let you guys know why I had a measure of scrutiny on this before going in, is because of stuff like this. Sound the alarm. Graham Platner says sexual assault victims should take some responsibility in now deleted Reddit posts. So, says implies present tense. Not having a date here is an omission. Do you see the problem here? Because there is not a date for when he said these things anywhere here. It is just a straight up, we sound the alarm because a person said a thing. Without the information on when it was done, when it happened, it's not quite Fox News omits important information bad, but it is, you are painting an improper picture of a person bad. Because there's a difference between this person says the R slur all the time, and this person said the R slur all the time on Xbox Live during Call of Duty Modern Warfare 20 years ago. Those are quite different statements. Neither of them are lies, but one omits pertinent information to the point where you can get the wrong idea about it, and the other is a more accurate statement. So that's why I tended to be a lot more scrupulous whenever I saw claims about Platner bad, because it kept being shit like that. Again, it's that liberal we hold your feet to the flame for ever having been a horrible person shit. I cannot even. Oh, yeah, by the way, in better news, Mitch McConnell's probably dead. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.